Thank you so much for making time to be here tonight. We're excited about tonight's episode, December. Woo, here we are. If you are anywhere near the West Michigan area, you are probably covered with snow. I don't know if you are covered with snow if you are elsewhere, but lots of shoveling and snow blowing and scraping those windows right now where we are. All right, let's see. Wendi, go ahead and make that full screen when you're ready. Thank you so much. And we will get started. To get over to my slide. There we go. Okay, so welcome to Engaged In, episode 4, where educators, leaders, and innovators come together to examine student engagement from every angle. This series invites you to deepen your understanding, expand your toolkit, and make meaningful connections that drive impact. I'm Bridget Reith.
Sarah's muted.
And Sarah Wood is also here, but potentially muted. She's doing some dancing.
Someone had to do it, right? I'm Sarah Wood. Surprisingly, I'm the ed tech here who couldn't remember to unmute herself. Wendi, would you mind advancing a few slides there to our agenda? All right, so for today, it looks like we have a lot of returning people. We might have some new people here this evening, so welcome everyone. Just as a reminder, our session today will be recorded, and in order to receive credit for attending this virtually here or watching the recording later, you must fill out the form that will be at the end for your exit ticket. And throughout this evening, we encourage you to use the chat liberally. Ask all the questions. We learn, Bridget and I were just talking about this earlier, we learn as much from you and our facilitators during this time. So please feel free to ask questions, not just of our facilitator or Bridget and myself, but each other as well. So I did put the link in the chat to our slides. So everyone should have that, and I will hand it back over to Wendi.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Wendi because Wendi is graciously taking the bulk of tonight's presentation. We appreciate that. Normally, we would do a little connector separately, and then we would do a little review of our student engagement. But Wendi's so good, she's just smashing them all together today. So please welcome Wendi Vogel. She is the science education consultant here at Kent ISD. She has been in on the one-to-one-to-one engagement mission work within the ISD for the last 3 years, and so is deeply versed within the accelerators and the looking at the many ways that they can be applied. So Wendi, take it away.
Thanks, Bridget. So a little bit about my background. I taught at the secondary level, mostly middle school, for a little under 2 decades now, and then I'm now here. And I've been at the ISD for 10 years now. I can't believe that. I got a pin and everything. It broke the first day, but it's okay. I'm excited to be here and excited about the topic. This is a very big passion of mine. So, all right, we're going to take a minute and we're going to do some discourse. We're going to have you in breakout rooms, which I have prepared. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a paired verbal fluency. If you don't know what that is, I do have instructions on the next slide, but let's take a look at it. I just wanted you to know where the quote came from, which is how people learn. There is a 1, this is 2. And it's based in a lot of our science education research, but it's very applicable everywhere else. And this one really is about learners, contexts, and cultures. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look, and you'll see the protocol at the top there. When you're in a breakout, and since I can't be in the breakout with you, I'm going to trust that you can handle this. But I know we're going to have one breakout with 3 people, so you guys can be. This will be an ABC opportunity rather than just an AB opportunity. So basically. We'll look at the quote in just a minute, but just make sure you know that you have the protocol around. Person A is going to share their thinking first. Person B is going to pause and paraphrase. And then you're going to swap. Then person B will share their thinking around the quote, and person A will pause and paraphrase what they said. So you're both speaking and listening in that conversation. If you have a C person in there too, then you can kind of do a triad rather than a pair. All right, so let's take a look at the quote here. The quote is, individual brains are critically shaped by social relationships, and the information they learn through these relationships supports both their emotions and their knowledge about facts, procedures, motivation, and interests. All right, so when you're going to make a decision if you agree with that, disagree with it, what suggestions they might have about the relationship between social engagement and learning, just having that conversation. So any questions on the protocol before we get started? You've got person A sharing, person B pausing and paraphrasing what they shared, then switch roles, and you'll do a triad if you have 3 in a group. Any questions? No? Okay. Hold on just a second here. I gotta do one quick move here because my breakout did not want to cooperate. There we go. Okay, I'm going to open up rooms and you should be able to go ahead and do that right now.
Looks like everyone is back in here.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. So I'm not going to ask for, just because there's so much content today that I'm not going to ask for a whole group share out. But if you've got something that you feel in your conversation that you would like to bring to the whole group, feel free to share that in the chat. We're going to kind of move forward as to what our content is going to be today. So I'm glad you guys could connect with one another. We're going to talk about academic discourse. And as you know, there's probably a million different ways to term this: academic productive talk, student discourse, academic productive student talk. I mean, I've heard it 1,000 different ways, but we're really getting to what we're going to talk about today. And I'll be honest with you, there's going to be a fire hose, and I would prefer to do this in a much more, we experience it as we learn it type situation, but there's just not enough time. So it's going to be a little bit of fire hose of information. I don't think a lot of this is going to be new information, but hopefully just a good reminder to sort of forward thinking a little bit about how we might increase the amount of time that we do this with students. Okay, so what I'm planning on hanging out with you doing is chatting a little bit about what do we think is happening in classrooms, or what do we know if we're observing them, or what are we doing in our own classroom? What is research telling us? What's our charge as educators, and what are some tips and resources to get this going in a classroom? That's kind of where we're headed today. And I'm hoping our purpose is to engage in how often we use discourse regularly in those classrooms today, and what benefits it has on those learning. We'll look a little bit at the research. And then the outcome I'm hoping is that you walk away with some resources and tips for engaging in that academic discourse in classrooms, or supporting a system and where you're wanting that to happen as well. That's kind of our goal today. So what is it? Let's define it. This is the ChatGPT version. I'll be honest with you, and I'll let you take a look at that on your own and read that a second. If you have a word that stands out to you as you read that, go ahead and throw that in the chat. Is there 1 or 2 words that really resonate with you in that definition? I don't think it's an exhaustive definition, but I think it's definitely one that's pretty good overview. Yeah, exchange of ideas, asking questions, new perspectives, excellent. Yep, critical thinking, respectful thinking. Yep, definitely. Okay. All right. Also with, there's usually a few key components that occur, right? When classroom student discourse is occurring. Active participation, right? We've got students actively engaged in that conversation. They're using academic language, hopefully progressing and more sophisticated throughout the time that you're spending in a unit. They're sharing responsibility, critical thinking, collaboration, diverse formats. Are used by educators. There's a lot of, and this is just a few of those components. There's a lot more. I wonder what you think, though. This is what I learned. I did a deep dive in Gemini with some research components, and I said, and I threw some names and authors and documents in there too. And I got kind of an overview. And this is what it told me as far as time in classroom. Teacher talk time can go up to 70% in a given class period. And at the secondary level, that's not so uncommon. And on average, a student engages in discourse only around 17% of the time in 5th through 8th grade or 5th through 12th grade classrooms. I didn't do elementary. It's more prevalent in elementary classrooms, but in 5th through in 12th grade, those are some staggering numbers. So I'm curious what you think. What are some of those reasons? And feel free to unmute if you'd like to. What are some of the reasons, or you can put it in the chat. What do you think might be why those 5th through 8th grade classrooms have such little student-to-student discourse and such high teacher talk time? Any ideas? Throw it in the chat, unmute and share. Either one is fine.
I think that the pressure to get all the content out there for the kids, it's,
Yeah,
there's just so much to do.
for sure. Time is definitely a constraint.
Mhm.
Yeah, the content is more rigorous and can be, there's a lot to cover for sure. I know in science we have basically 4 sets of standards that have to do in 3 years, right? And that's almost nearly impossible in my world. Yep. A lack of awareness, right? Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Just that professional learning on how to use those strategies. Absolutely. Yep. And it can lead, you're right. Absolutely, McKenna, the idea that you've got to have a skill set as an educator to get them back on topic because it can go down some rabbit holes, can it? Absolutely. Okay. So thank you guys for sharing. I appreciate that. Okay, here we got one more here too. Yes, I agree. Many of the lessons are designed around those pieces too. So, yep. And so, yep, for sure. Yep. And not knowing how to facilitate dialogue. I agree with all of those things. I think those are all definitely part of that cause. Okay, so clearly we have a problem of practice, especially in secondary classrooms, where a lot of that teacher talk and recitation is happening more so. If you've ever heard of IRE, which is that initiation response evaluation protocol, where a teacher asks a question, is looking for really quick, immediate feedback. That usually feedback is a close-ended question that we're just checking for understanding, and we get a kid who gets the right answer after raising their hand, and then the teacher says back to them, "Good job," and then we move on. And so that's really what's happening most often, that's probably, there's nothing wrong with it, just it might be happening too often, right? We sometimes do need that quick check. So how do we, but what we know about academic discourse is that, and I'm going to kind of breeze over these large scale paragraphs that you can go back to later if you'd like to, but it's going to correlate, like if we do have those academic discussions, we're going to have higher order thinking skills that are being attended to. We're going to have more cognitive gains, higher academic outcomes, kids are more motivated in a classroom. And this is all those research-based pieces based on a few different studies that were pulled from that Gemini meta-analysis. It even shows a positive effect size to things like self-efficacy. So we're attending to a lot of those accelerators when we add academic discourse to our classroom day. We also have, it's also going to support student identity and comfort level in the classroom, right? Autonomy, how comfortable we are, some of our student choice pieces, that ability to be vulnerable in a classroom and understand that that's okay. And it's going to attend to rigor. You're going to get more evidence-based discussions, so that will hopefully transfer. It does tend to transfer between subject areas, but I hope it transfers as a citizen as well. And so there's just a lot of things that are good about doing this. And so it really makes me curious as to why there's so little of it, 17% of the time and 70% talk time. What do we might need to know in order to figure out how to increase this? And I think you guys already gave samples in the chat, so I'm not going to ask that question again. But I do think there's definitely some room to grow. Okay. So I just mentioned a little bit of some of that meta-analysis research piece, and then taking a look at those engagement accelerators again. I know we advertise this as really part of those instructional moves and student-centered learning. However, it hits all of the buttons, right? We're going to get in a little bit into asset-driven teaching, climate, environment, and relationships. And so that makes it a pretty good place to start to kind of punch into a lot of those categories. All right. So power of student discourse, kind of just to summarize it, talk makes our thinking public. It's a tool for thinking. It's a tool for thinking together because learning is a social endeavor. And talk culture in a classroom helps us understand who is silent. That's always interesting. And then it also helps to really have students being used that specialized language in each of their disciplines as well. So the language we use might mean something different in art than it does in math. And so using those accordingly will help kids kind of understand, differentiate between those things. All right. Okay, so we also have some tools that this state of Michigan through MESA and GLN have developed that also kind of produce that charge for academic discourse. And so I'm just going to breeze through these, but we have a suite of literacy tools that go pre-K 12, and they also have some systems and school-wide practices as well that highlight literacy in all classrooms. And practice 5 and 6 in each of those suite of tools are pretty much the same, which is the higher order discussion of increasingly complex text, and then practice 6, which is the opportunity for instruction in critically viewing, speaking, and listening. And so those are the charge that we have in those documents. And if you want, I'm not going to go too deeply into this right now, but I did want to link the resources if you're not familiar with them. Grades 4, 5, 6, 12, and then this year they have just released the Beyond the Core, which is really exciting if you support or are a part of elective courses. So this thinks about what it looks like in PE, or it looks like in music classes or world language classes as well. But there's the charge there is to continue to have those reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing, and representing opportunities. And the speaking and listening pieces are very well shouted out in these documents. Okay. Moving forward, just also those documents do have, just so you know, if you're a coach or administrator, that they have school-wide practices for those, as well as readiness checklists for implementation. And so there are some documents that support in that as well. And we here at Kent ISD are more than happy to provide you with support in those within those documents as well. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the problem practice, the research behind it, and now we got to think about, well, how do you actually do this? And I'm guessing if you're here, you probably have tried this before, and I'm guessing you've had some successes, and like me in my classroom, probably had a few failures along the way too when you're trying it. And oh, very good question, Alexis. I can answer that. Yes-ish, not a direct link, but for sure, absolutely. Okay. So moving from IRE to that student discourse piece, there's lots of models for this. We could it can be teacher-led, student-led. You could do pairs, small group, whole group, and some kind of hybrid of that too. A lot of times in whole group conversations, I would have my students pair off in whole groups. So if it became a cricket thing, they could turn and talk and then come back to whole group, right? So sometimes you end up with a combination of things too. And this is a Sparta classroom full of 6th grade awesomeness from a few years ago. Greg has since retired, but they're solving some problems together, and Greg is facilitating that small group. One of the tools that we're going to have to start getting used to in classrooms that are full of talk is both the teacher has to have those back pocket course moves, which take some time and energy, and students are going to have to learn those too. It's a skill that's going to have to be slowly, gradually released over time to sort of think about how we're doing it, what we're doing it, and lots of links that I have opportunities for you to look into to see how to do it too. All right, so I'm going to kind of go, because of our limited time today, I wanted to just kind of go through some tips for implementation of academic discourse, which I'm going to ask you to sort of think through if I'm missing anything. Okay, so go through and like, okay, yeah, I agree with this, I disagree with this, but I think I would have added this. So if you've got any adds, please let me know along the way. I think that'd be great to add a few tips as well. All right, let's get started. So tip 1, My first tip is explicitly teaching students how to listen. That is absolutely necessary. And I have seen kindergartners do it. I have seen high school students do it, but really making sure that kids are listening to one another so that they can eventually agree, disagree, add on, or have a conversation. And I have linked a few tools here. Well, to start, right, listening to partner talks is the easiest way to start that conversation, right? And sharing with a partner, pause, paraphrase, repeat. Low stakes conversations where they don't have to be right or wrong, like what's your favorite subject, just to get going on things like that. Or, favorite piece of playground equipment. Sentence stems are always a great opportunity to lean in as far as listening as well, and providing those sentence stems even after they're good at it, because some kids might just need that little reminder. And then, of course, modeling it with students and gradually releasing that process. I've linked a lot on the slide deck of some of my favorite tools. I'll be honest, this middle tool, the student talk moves, is what most of my high school teachers who use this are using. It's one of their favorites. But there's a couple on there that I really like. This one is specifically just grounding for listening, and so is this one over here. So there's lots of tools, but those are some of my favorites. This one's actually a bookmark, which works nice for notebooks or books or reading material. Okay. Tip 2, ensuring students learn to critique only ideas, not one another. That really is helpful if you have the right sentence stems. So having kids say, I agree with that idea because, or I disagree with that idea because, but we're not actually critiquing one another or agreeing or disagreeing or adding on. We're really looking at those ideas that are coming out. Okay. I'll share really quickly. You can read this while I talk a second if you want to. This is the actual protocol I used with my kids in my classroom. But I had a story with one of my students who we went through 3 claims, 3 people protocol, where I had 3 claims on the board that were written. I didn't write the claims out here because I didn't remember what they were, but they had to select, was it Juan's, Amy's, or Adir's claim that they were going to agree with, and with some reasoning. And we had done some activities the day before. And so they had to talk similar to the way you did in your paired verbal fluency at the beginning of the session, a little bit about why they had picked the claim and what evidence they had to support it. And they had to talk to 3 different people, and they were allowed to change their mind all the way through. And when we got to the end, I did take a poll where they started as a class and then at the way they ended as a class, which allowed me a formative assessment to see where they were, which talk often does that for you. And I had this little, I had one of my students, and she was just a little pipsqueak, like maybe 4'8" on a good day. And she pops up, and I hadn't even asked the question, had anybody changed their mind? And she pops up and she goes, Miss Vogel. And I go, what? Do you need what? And she goes, Miss Vogel, I thought I knew the answer. And this is ridiculous because I talked to so-and-so and so-and-so, and then they had better evidence than I did, and I changed my mind. And so then I got the opportunity. I was like, well, tell me more. And so she explained herself, and then she explained her reasoning behind it. And then I got to say, did anyone else have that opportunity too? But she was so excited that she had changed her mind, that those ideas from other people were safe and okay for her to, change her own ideas too. So it's kind of fun to see those. And those are those kind of moments that you sort of beg for and look for as a teacher, right? They're the ones that get you so excited, right? She cracked me up. So anyway, and then those ideas move on to too, like if you're going to be able to critique one another's ideas, we're also going to have to create a culture where making thinking public is the goal. It's okay to share some thinking, even if it's not right. In fact, we want you to share it if it's not right. And then we want to critique that idea in an evidence-based way. But that requires a little bit of vulnerability, right? I have a video here, and I'm not sure, I'm looking at the time here. I'm not going to play it, but I do recommend that you go back and look. This is a math classroom where the educator has come into realizing that kids were not talking to one another and were not getting help from one another. And so what he did was created math interviews where they had 2 separate problems and would interview one another. And it was okay if you didn't know how to do the math problem, because then you would tell your the person interviewing you, where you got stuck, why you got stuck, and how could they maybe help them forward. But it's an excellent, excellent example of creating that culture where it's okay to be wrong. In fact, he expected it. And then he had some things in the classroom around ready for when they did struggle. Okay, I'm gonna press pause here. But it's a great video. Okay, tip 4, plan for discussion. You cannot go into your class without planning a little bit, right? You've got to have your protocol ready. You can not plan for a pair and share real quick, but if you're going to have a larger something than a pair and share, you really do have to plan for that discourse and plan for it based on what are the goals? Set those goals for that conversation. What do you want students to take away? And then think about what students you have in your classroom. I'll tell you right now, I had a classroom, total fluke. You guys are going to cry a little bit. It had it had a couple kids leave, but it had between 13 and 15 kids. That never happens, right? You're like, never. All the rest of my classes had 28 to 30. This class just happened to be a weird scheduling block. But of my 13 kids, 8 of them had IEPs and 1 had a 504. So I kept thinking, this class, we're going to only have like 13, 15 kids. We're going to fly through this information. Guess what did not happen, you guys? It did not. We did not fly through anything. I had to back up. And the way I planned for discussion in that classroom was very different than I had to plan for the rest of my classrooms. We spent a lot more time in that class in small group. And so the para, and yes, I did have a para at the time too. So the para and I would, and he was a certified teacher too. And so the two of us would, we would like distribute ourselves in those small groups so that we could support that discourse along the way. So plan for who you have in your classroom, right? Some groups are going to do better in small group. Other groups are going to do better in whole groups. So sort of think through what you're going to do. And then your capacity that day, right? Every day is different. And maybe today is not the day for that really big whole group discussion because it just has been a disaster all week, right? And that's okay. Give yourself some grace. And then thinking about, of course, time. Time is a constraint. Where do you think you'll end? If you're doing a whole group, do you need to carry it on? Where do you want to be? Do you only have 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, etc.? Okay. All right. I've linked, this might be my favorite tool of all time here under the planning. This is the goals for productive discussion and checklist. This is a really good one if you are a coach as well. I'm going to pull this up and kind of pull it up a little bit because what it does is it actually has 4 goals for discussion. Are you going to be helping individuals share and expand or deepen their reasoning or listen? And it has just 3 prompts that teachers can use as they pick their goal. And as if you're a coach or admin, you can actually go in and you could have a co-teacher come in and frequently show how frequently you're using some of those. So it's kind of a nice way to collect some data in a classroom too. That's my favorite tool. We use that. I've used that kinder all the way through 12th grade. There's also out there some discussion planning tools when you plan ahead, right? And so this is one that we use in science quite a bit. It's an open education resource one from OpenSci, but it actually allows teachers to go through what type of discussion this is, what we're going to do, what's the purpose, and what is our goal. The nice thing about this one too is it's a Google Doc, so I can make a copy of it and alter it any way I want to. Okay, tip 5. Moving forward, told you fire hose on it today. Actively listening to students. This is the teacher's charge. We have to actively listen to those students to find the patterns that help us to push their thinking. It's nice in secondary if you teach something more than once a day, you can kind of figure it out the first hour or two, and you know that 5th hour is always a little bit better than first, right? But for those of us who teach elementary, we might not have that same discussion until a year later. So we might have to write some things down. So, but you start finding patterns in student thinking when you're having them have conversations, and that allows you to really actively listen. Even in small groups, sometimes I'd walk around and be super secret spy with my notebook and say, okay, I've heard so-and-so say this and this so-and-so say that as I was listening to you. So that's a skill that you have to really kind of hone in on. Again, this is, video walk into that space later. This is a protocol where an art teacher is using it at the secondary level. I think it's an 8th grade classroom where they have a protocol that they use that is specifically forcing teachers to stop, listen to the students, pause, paraphrase what they're saying, and then move on. So it's like really, that's the protocol. It's the protocol is for the teacher, not just the kids, so that they can do that listening very, very clearly. All right, that's gonna pause too. Okay, so far we've gone through a little over half of the tips. Have any of the tips surprised you, affirmed your thinking, challenged your thinking? Go ahead and unmute or add to the chat right now if you've got some thoughts on any of that so far. I'm guessing none of them have surprised you. Yeah, affirmed, I figured. Yeah. Tip two. Good. Thanks. Affirmed for sure. Fantastic. Yeah. Bridget and I talked about how I didn't put classroom management in here, but that probably is number one, right? Like we've got to have some pretty decent classroom management to get kids to be doing this stuff first. But classroom management is always first, right? For almost everything we do. So, okay. Thanks. All right. So let's go through the last few here. Selecting protocols. You do have to select a protocol, and the goal is to try to get as many voices to participate as possible in those protocols, which means you may have to embed a protocol within a protocol, right? Some of the things that I've done in my classroom or I have seen in other folks' classrooms, I mentioned earlier, like having an elbow partner in a whole group conversation so that if I get the crickets, we elbow partner, then we come back and we can talk about what I said or what they said. Love a good stop and jot so that we've got some thinking on paper before we go. I loved this one. This was actually a video, if we have time, we're going to take a peek at, but in a Socratic seminar, a social studies teacher was actually having students collect data during the discussion who didn't want to talk. So they knew that those kids were uncomfortable talking, so they would collect some data and then share out afterwards some of the summary information. Gallery walks, jigsaws, whiteboarding, modeling. I've linked a couple in there that are some of my favorites. The discussion diamond requires 4 kids to share first, and then they come to consensus in the middle of the diamond. One I saw a student teacher of mine do last year, which is a hexagonal thinking that they pulled out in Countwood. That one was really cool, where they were linking their content together to explain how some of the anatomy phys stuff work together. That was pretty sweet. And then hand signals, they kind of have a mixed reaction, you know, like I've seen some teachers do them really, really well. And others are like, the kids are not paying attention. They're just looking, oh, I better put my thumb up, right? So it just depends on the classroom. And the research shows there's a little bit of a mixed bag on those too. I will also mention with this too, I have had some selective mutes. I don't know if anyone has ever had a selective mute in their classroom. Yep, Sally's like, yes, I have. So I had one in particular that she had a couple of friends she would talk to, but not full group and not anybody else. And so I had to be I had to pair her with her friends, which seems like maybe I was being manipulated a little bit, maybe, I don't know, but it worked. Or if she had to use somebody else, then I would give her a piece of paper and pencil. And she'd have to write down. She was very bright, but she'd have to write down her information, and then she could just give that piece of paper to her partner. So, I mean, sometimes you get those just kind of different things that you have to attend to too. But the goal is that her voice is heard too, even if she's choosing not to speak to everybody. Okay, tip 7, thinking about if this will be a pair situation, a small group or a whole group conversation, sort of tailoring what you need to your learning objectives for the day. Mixing it up is always good too. I think the kids like that mix up as well. All right. And then 7, I have an example of whole group. We're going to watch this one in just a second because this is a Socratic seminar and I love this video. But we do have an example here if you want to dig deeper into that whole group. And then I'm being very vulnerable here, and I put a video of my chem kids from a few years ago when I was spending a little time at KIH, which is now closed. But this is a small group conversation I videoed with them. And so I am the person in the background. So I'll just say that right now. So be kind, but it's there. And this is just a small group discussion on a little can explosion that we did in class. And it's one of their initial models. And so you'll hear some of the kids talk back and forth and use some of that discourse language. All right, tip 8. Reflect on how it went. I mean, this is kind of standard operating procedure, right? How might you do things differently in the future? Take note, write it down if you have to, or just take note in the back of your head, however you're going to do that, but always take time to reflect and shift as needed. And then tip 9, be real with students. Tell them you're trying something new. That was always a game changer in my room. I'm like, guys, I don't have any idea if this protocol is going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. And then you guys can give me thumbs up, thumbs down when we're done, if you ever want to do this again or not, or tell me how we might do it differently. And kids are usually up for that, right? So give them a chance to provide some feedback too. All right, those are my 9. Anything I'm missing, you guys? Anything you would add? Anything I wasn't attending to with some of those tips along the way when we think about putting student discourse into our classrooms?
I was thinking about all of these tips and strategies seem to be at least related to just open discussion without delving into a text. So having them doing some reading together and
Yes.
and using protocols around text-based dialogues, especially at the
Yes.
secondary level. I mean, you could still do it at elementary, it's just a different level of text, right? So
Yes. No, I 100% agree. And that's that DLE number 5 that we talked about earlier, that they specifically want you to dive into some different texts. In the social studies Socratic seminar, you'll see that she did do that too, if we get a chance to watch that. But I agree. You want them engaged in text, video, images, charts and graphs and data and all of that. And all of that can be done. It doesn't have to just be open-ended like that. We can have a very specific thing around that. I love that ad. Thank you for that. Anything else that we need to add or shift or change for now? And you can always throw it at us later too. I'd love to see what else we might be missing. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to exit because I don't know that I'm going to stop share for just a hot second and reshare because I don't know if I have checked all. I have not done all the optimizing boxes when we do this. So let me optimize everything and then share. And then I have to find all of you because that happens every time I do this. Where did you all go? Show participant panel. It always hides it after I do that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and slideshow. I'm going to show you a Socratic seminar in a secondary social studies classroom. And Alexis, you'll see what she did to prep. They all had articles that they had to read before they engaged in that too. And I think, good reading protocols too, marking up your text, having interactive read aloud and guides, doing all of that stuff is really necessary, right? You're absolutely right when we did just talk a little bit about mostly discussion.
I can discuss whether or not Confederate monuments should be removed by listening to my peers and using evidence.
By talking and expressing oneself, we learn more deeply. One thing we know from the science of learning is that complex instruction needs to be scaffolded, that students need to be enabled to take each step along the path. And in this classroom, we see a very sophisticated conversation being scaffolded to help them learn how to talk to each other about this very difficult concept in a very respectful and thoughtful way.
We've just finished a 6-week unit on the Civil War. They needed a safe space to talk about racial issues and justice issues. I decided a discussion would be the best way for them to learn about the issue, bring in evidence, and have their voices be heard. I sourced about 15 different articles to meet kids where they were at in terms of length of texts or level of complexity of texts.
Part of the scaffolding in this classroom is that this teacher has found 15 different texts for students to read to prepare for the discussion so that they can speak with evidence and so that their evidence is accessible to them.
It's important to understand that even though somebody says something you might disagree with, everybody's contributing to this shared dialogue in this safe space. Somebody start us off.
I think Confederate monuments should be removed based on the Atlantic. It said establishing monuments to Confederate war heroes in turn celebrates men who committed treason.
I was very pleased with a lot of students who really came out of their shell.
I want to disagree with a lot of you saying that they're bad.
I
They're a part of
loved that there was healthy debate.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't want that in this country.
We need to find a way for each side to be able to see the opposing side's points instead of just argue them.
They were polite, they were encouraging, and I think it helps them understand that deeper understanding of history.
It's all in perspective. If you know it's wrong, then you can use it to create change.
So we're actually going to stop there. There were a couple people in the room tracking things from the conversation.
She's thought about the fact that some students may be more comfortable participating by tracking the conversation and then reporting out what they found.
Ethan used evidence in a cool way. He brought up how...
So there are many ways for students to get their brains engaged and to be participating in this discussion. The deep conversation they've just had is actually extended by the fact that they get to reflect at the end in writing.
Tell me how your thinking is now changed after this conversation. It's okay if it didn't change, but you need to tell me why.
That reflection, which is metacognitive, really helps the students carry more learning out of the experience they've just had.
So I think Alexis was hinting at this earlier. Very seldom is a conversation just for a conversation, right? It's often going to be accompanied by other components such as reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing, represent. I mean, it's going to be content related very typically too. You'll see in some of the other videos, like the art one, they're actually reading images or art. They're reading an art picture up on the board and doing a conversation around that. Clearly in this particular high-end example, which they're reading, they're writing, and they're having a conversation. So it's typically coupled with something else, right? Almost all my conversations had to do with claims and evidence that came from labs and readings and combinations of things that were in their student notebooks, and they would bring their student notebooks to have that conversation together. They were almost never apart from any of that. It wasn't just to have a regular conversation, it had a very intentional purpose behind it. So yeah, okay. So it sounds like I get to do, at that point, I want to appreciate that, or I want to thank all of you for allowing me to fire hose, which is not the way I would like to do something like this, but it is the way that we get to do it today. Anybody have like a discussion item or a question or anything that you might want to engage the whole group with, or anything you've had success with that you would like to share?
Wendi, I just want to thank you for sharing some of the resources that you have used. And one in particular stood out that could be used by anyone is just the idea of having it in a bookmark, having those prompts always there, even if you're not engaging in that discussion at that time, because then they're looking at it, kind of internalizing it. So when they go to actually engage in that discussion, it might already be in their head and they might not need that prompt as is, to get the conversation going.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so many versions of those. I've seen them for elementary up to high school. I've got some really great first grade teachers who've used pictures and diagrams and anchor charts. And then I've got high school teachers who are like, here's your bookmark, let's go. Right. And so we see a lot of variety of that. And in middle school, we had to practice a lot because they're middle schoolers. So we did a lot of practicing. All right. Okay. So I will, one last, or I'll get back to the share here. There will be a landing page that is sent out to you along with not just the slide deck, but I have created. I did this with some of my teachers that needed it. So it does lean a little bit science, but I got to be honest with you, most of the tools in this digging deeper link right here could be used in any content area. And manipulated to way you need it. But there are a lot of just tools in there. I put it together for a particular district in our county, and you'll see that it's got student academic resources, general resources and protocols, resources to use with the English language or multilanguage learners and academic language learners. And then some of the research I linked in that meta-analysis from the Gemini Deeper Dive tool as well. What I will go back to is I'll go back and put some of those video examples, create another layer to this. This is kind of an ongoing document forever and ever. But I'll add those videos from the presentation into there as well. So just so you have that. So, all right, I will pass the baton. I want to thank you for coming and joining me. I hope that you've been affirmed or grabbed an extra resource that kind of you can put in your tool belt. Holler if you need anything. This is one of my passions, so I'm happy to support in any way possible from the ISD. But I will pass it back on to Bridget or Sarah.
Thank you so much, Wendi. I really appreciate it. And I just want to give you a heads up. The resources that Wendi has collected are massive. You're going to open those documents and go, oh, there is so much there. So please make sure that you access that. I will email a link to that out, but they're also going to live permanently on our webinar guide. So those links will be there for you to access. And I appreciate all the time. If you can go ahead and forward a slide for us there. Wendi, thank you. Remember that in order to get the sketch credit for tonight's webinar, you will need to put in one of those, excuse me, those exit tickets. They are brief and easy to do. You have until when? May 23rd. But do it soon. If you've watched it live, I would just go ahead and do it soon. Go ahead and advance one because I want to talk about this next one. Oh, thank you. I will double check that. They should all lead to the same form, and then there should be one of the questions allows you to select which webinar you are responding to. Does that make sense? Was that Alexis that put that in?
She's right.
Yeah, it
I'll
only
change
says
what's there.
student engagement. It only gives you one choice.
Student engagement.
I'll
All right.
change that now.
All right, Sarah, our ed tech person, is all over that. I appreciate that. Coming up, we have the next in January, we have Du Bui coming. He is our STEM consultant, and he is deeply involved with career-connected learning, K-12. So he will be talking about the engagement opportunities and the really asset-driven teaching that exists within career-connected learning. So we're looking forward to that. This is the one I really want to talk to. First of all, it's an alliteration. Double down, and that's fun, which might make you just want to do it for that purpose. However, I just want to say a little more if you are brand new to this, or if you listen to this later and you're new to this is not an onerous thing for you to do, and it's an extra sketch for each one that you fill out. So per episode, if there is an idea or a strategy or a tool that you use or talk to other people about or somehow transfer to the life that you live professionally, all you have to do is fill out one extra Google form with your basic information in it, and then you're just going to describe what the idea was and what you did with it. So one extra sketch credit for each one of those you fill out, and I encourage you to do this. Still not coming up. Okay. Does it have more than one topic, Alexis, or just the one? Still the one.
While you're doing that a minute, Bridget, too, I'll throw out just a shout to if you are a classroom teacher or a coach or an admin and you have something or that you would love to share with us, we are also collecting some video across the county of some of our amazing teachers involved in some of our accelerators. And so we'll have Bridget and Sarah share that link out where you can nominate somebody to have us go in. We think our amazing videographer, Max, is going to come in with that too. So it'd be like a quick interview with the teacher to share what they're doing that aligns with the accelerator, and then actually go into those classrooms and watch them perform their magic, which is truly what happens in classrooms is my full belief. So if you've got something like that, we'd love to have you have you attempt to be vulnerable. If I can share a video of me teaching, you all can too. Right?
Yes, Wendi, thank you for being our role model on that. We are looking forward to putting that resource together that you will have access to down the road. If you have, I'm sorry, like in the middle of the afternoon when Wendi was somewhere else serving a district, I reached out to her and said, hey, if you want to fill in that little box, feel free. But of
Apparently,
course, she
I
was
did not.
busy. She was busy.
Yes, I was with the department. So
So
I would
Wendy, is
just
there
say,
anything you want to mention?
I would just say that if you do have science teachers, that we do have a couple of different science connects on our website that we would love to have them join us. We have a MyStar Connect if they use middle school MyStar, and then we have a secondary Connect in the spring. We will be at the zoo, and the giraffes are supposed to maybe be out. So we're going to take a tour of the zoo and talk a little bit about environmental stewardship, and then we have some breakouts where we do some learning. So if your science teachers are not at that, we really encourage you to join. It's a great day of networking and learning together. We do that twice a year. So I will also be doing some science safety, which I don't have up there yet, but making sure that we're safe in our classrooms and that chemical lab stuff and the PPE stuff and all that fun stuff too. So those will be coming. I'll add that to the slide deck, but I was in a district right before I got here, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. And thank you, Wendy. Wendy's email address is on the earlier slides too. So feel free to reach out directly to her, or if you know somebody who would be interested in that information, please share that. We also in Kent County, if you are an Kent County educator, we are beginning to work directly with districts around student engagement. So if that feels like something that your district might be interested in or a building might be interested in, feel free to reach out either to Sarah or myself, and we can explore some possibilities and get that going. We appreciate you being here. If you have questions, feel free to hang out. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great rest of your month, and we'll look forward to seeing you in January.
Thank you guys for coming. Have a lovely afternoon.